model in the laboratory. We've tried to err on the side of cautions whenever we made our calculations using conservative assumptions. But nevertheless, what we found when we ran the model was very disturbing.
The Swiss scientists' final calculations produced an extraordinary wave.
If the Cumbre Vieja were to collapse as one single block, it would create a giant Mega Tsunami with an initial wave height of 650 meters and a wavelength of 30 to 40 kilometers, traveling westwards across the Atlantic with speeds up to 720 kilometers an hour towards America.
The scale of this produced a feeling of unreality as one realised what could happen. This event is so huge that it will affect not only the people on the island, but people way, way on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. People who've never even heard of La Palma will be affected by this event.
So when is the next catastrophic event going to happen? The geologists had now discovered the Cumbre Vieja could collapse during some future volcanic eruption. The difficulty, however, is in knowing when this will happen.
We have no idea when the next eruption will occur on the summit of the Cumbre Vieja. In recorded history, there have been eruptions in 1949, in 1712, in 1646. So it looks as though there is an eruption up there once every 2 centuries or so, on average. The last eruption was 50 years ago, so it is likely that sometime during the next century there will be another eruption up there.
Tourists in America and the Canaries shouldn't cancel their holidays. The next summit eruption is unlikely to happen for decades, and it may take many more eruptions before the flank of the volcano is pushed into the Atlantic. The problem is, scientists cannot tell.
There could be 5 more summit eruptions of the Cumbre Vieja before the western flank collapses. There could be 10, there could be 20. On the other hand, the west flank could collapse during the next eruption. We simply don't know. But put it this way, if I was living in Miami or New York and I heard that the Cumbre Vieja was erupting, I'd be keeping a very close eye on the news.
The geological evidence now shows that La Palma may well be the next volcanic island to collapse. And when it does so, it will create a devastating natural disaster.
Well, the first thing that you'd feel, actually, would be seismic activity, earthquakes, because the collapse is going to be related to an eruption.
As the forces within the volcano built up to the point where they will begin to overcome the friction forces holding the flank in place, the flank will begin to move towards the sea.
And then at some point, the rock will fail on a major scale. And this huge chunk of rock, maybe 20 kilometers long or more, will start to slide into the sea.
The waves initially here would be many hundreds of meters high, and those waves would all be moving out into the ocean, spreading out laterally, but with a lot of the energy heading across the Atlantic towards the coast of the Americas.
Looking down on it, it'll look unbelievable. It'll look as if the island is falling apart, generating these huge waves which are fanning outwards to reach the eastern coast of the United States.
The waves would take about 8 hours to travel between here and the coast of America. Just enough time to get the message out, to warn people that this event was happening. But unless evacuation plans were incredibly efficient, it would not be enough time to get everybody out of the affected areas. The areas at risk include cities like Miami, parts of Boston, the coastal areas and suburbs of New York.
We're standing on the beach in what is presently Miami. The very first effect you'd probably see is what we call drawback. The ocean would suddenly just pull away. You'd see a tide, a low tide like you've never seen before in your life. It would be actually spellbinding. But in the background, you'd be seeing this wall, and it would keep coming at you.
This will be the biggest natural catastrophe in history. There's a problem with all major natural catastrophes. Because we've never experienced these things, we don't think that they're going to happen to us. We just ignore them. But these sorts of events have occurred throughout geological history. They're not going to stop happening just because we're around. La Palma is going to collapse into the North Atlantic. It's not a question of if, it's just a question of when.